These are the 10 most valuable football clubs in the world. And this guy right here is the richest man in Europe, finally stepping into the football game. With his kind of money, he could easily buy all 10 of these clubs, plus the full rosters of every team in Europe's top 5 leagues. And after all that, he'd still have around 100 billion euros left. Bernard Arnault's wealth is on another level. Putting him next to other billionaire club owners doesn't even feel fair. He's in the same league as football projects funded by whole countries, the oil-rich giants reshaping the game. But instead of going down that same path, Arnault chose something totally different. He picked a small second division team from France, a club that's been stuck under a curse for the past 50 years. And this isn't about flashy signings or chasing instant glory. His strategy is way more low-key, way more calculated, and what's really wild, the guy isn't even a football head, he's way more into tennis. So why is he doing this? Let's break it all down. My name is Ruslan, and it's time to pull the trigger, so buckle up. November 2024, the global luxury giant LVMH, the company behind pretty much everything fancy in fashion and lifestyle, suddenly drops some big news. They're adding a new asset to their massive empire. But this time, it's not another fashion house or a high-end perfume. It's a football club, a low-key, long-forgotten team from the heart of Paris. This is one of those stories where two total opposites somehow find each other. The Paris Football Club's main achievement over the past half-century is winning the French Amateur Football Championship in 2006. The team's last season in the top division dates back to the 70s. They spent decades at the bottom of French football. On the other side stands LVMH, one of the world's most powerful and successful companies. It manages a portfolio of 75 elite brands across 5 key sectors. In 2023, the company brought in almost 85 billion euros in revenue. The whole thing's run by the Arnault family. They've got their hands on 48% of the empire. But they're not stopping at just luxury stuff. The family invests in various industries: real estate, technology startups, streaming platforms, and even social media like TikTok. However, jumping into football stands out. This move doesn't align with their usual playbook. Sure, the company's Parisian roots and the family's love for their homeland can be part of the story, a touch of sentimentality that probably played a role in the club's purchase. But come on, Bernard Arnault doesn't make decisions based on feelings. He's a hardcore business shark. His built empire results from brutal, calculated moves, not emotional ones. Plus, Bernard's not even a football guy. If anything, he's way more into tennis. The answer's sitting just to Bernard's right, because the main character of this story isn't the head of the family, it's his eldest son, Antoine Arnault. He's a massive football fan, obsessed with the game, and a die-hard Liverpool supporter. For years, Antoine's been pushing the idea that the luxury world still underappreciates football. When he became head of communications at Louis Vuitton, he turned that vision into action, connecting one of the biggest luxury brands on the planet directly to the football world. And once Antoine took over comms for the whole conglomerate, luxury brands didn't just team up with football, they took it over. The idea of promoting luxury through sports turned out to be a hit, so the holding doubled down and started pouring serious money into it. But last year, things went to a whole new level. Not just more investment, but way deeper involvement in top-tier sports. That summer, LVMH became a premium partner of the Paris Olympic Games, dropping the biggest sponsor check of them all. Not long after that, the company signed a 10-year, $1 billion deal with Formula One, making it the biggest sponsorship contract in motorsport history. And by the end of the year, it was football's turn. The luxury giant, taking cues from other massive football projects funded by entire nations, is ready to push its brands, boost its image, and spread its philosophy through a football project of its own. But even though one of the wealthiest families in the world is stepping into the same arena as the Gulf states, Antoine isn't here to play their game. No oil money flex, no superstar buying sprees, no head-on collisions. He's got a different plan, a smarter strategy, and he's not doing it solo. Antoine is rolling with a beast of an ally. On the day the club takeover was officially announced, Antoine made it clear that the family would not be handling the day-to-day operations. They simply don't have the experience for that. Instead, FC Paris is joining the ranks of one of the biggest forces in global sports, Red Bull sports empire. These two giants already know each other well. LVMH has been a partner of Red Bull Racing in Formula One for nearly a decade through one of its luxury watch brands. Red Bull's sports journey actually started in motorsport. In 1985, even before launching their energy drink, they signed a minor $10,000 sponsorship deal with Austrian Formula One driver Gerhard Berger. That move changed everything. Fast forward nearly 4 decades, and Red Bull's sports empire now covers at least 6 different disciplines, with its sports assets valued at over $4 billion. This year marks 20 years since Red Bull entered football. Currently, they fully own 4 clubs across 3 continents, and last year, they made another big move, becoming minority shareholders in Leeds United. Red Bull's been trying to break into English football for a decade, but between fan backlash and strict football regulators who push back hard against changing a club's historic identity, they hit a wall, so they shifted tactics. Instead of buying Leeds outright and going full rebrand mode, the Austrians switched to a softer entry strategy into the most valuable football market in the world. No major takeover, no name change, just an investment and branding partnership. And right after that, Red Bull jumped into the new FC Paris venture. But this time, things were different. In France, they secured a more significant stake in the club and even a seat at the boardroom table. According to the deal, Pierre Ferracci, the current club president, will gradually reduce his 30% share by 2027 and step away completely, with Antoine Arnault taking over as the new president. This move was designed to make the transition as smooth as possible. Ferracci knows the club's inner workings better than anyone, and for now, he'll help integrate the new ownership into the system. Once that's done, he steps aside. On top of that, Pierre's political connections in the city will also be helpful when the team moves to a new stadium, or maybe the club will consider building its own arena. But we'll circle back to that. Something still unclear is what will happen with the small stake in the club owned by British Sri Lankan investors. They jumped into the Paris project at the end of 2021, becoming the second international investor after the Kingdom of Bahrain joined the year before. At the time, Bahrain was pouring serious money into global projects to boost its image and promote tourism. As a new shareholder, they grabbed the prime sponsor spots on the club's jersey and pushed the idea of turning Paris into a real competitor for its richer, flashier neighbor. But yeah, Qatar didn't lose any sleep over it. The goal to reach Ligue 1 in 3 seasons fell short, disappointing the Bahraini investors. Plus, the kingdom shifted its overall strategy, choosing to focus on other sectors. So eventually, Bahrain pulled out of the project. Anyway, back to this new setup. Let's break down how the Arnault-Red Bull partnership actually works. Red Bull runs all its sports clubs through a centralized management system. Everyone follows the same playbook built around a shared philosophy. Each club has a board made up of company reps who help steer the Red Bull strategy. They influence everything from transfers and staffing to marketing and long-term goals. But the core of the whole system is simple: develop young talent. It actually started in motorsport. Their Toro Rosso F1 team was built specifically to train young drivers and prepare them for the big leagues. And that same mindset has carried over into football. To keep things consistent across different countries, languages, and football cultures, Red Bull uses a single development model across all its clubs. Sure, the coaches and managers might change in youth teams and academies, but the overall approach stays the same. Standardized training, centralized leadership, and a constant exchange of experience between clubs. And now, Paris is officially part of that system. The club already has a pretty decent academy in place. Though yeah, it's got its own set of problems, which I'll get into in the next chapter. But the good news is, they're not building from scratch. At the foundational level, Paris is already a solid match with Red Bull's football identity. That said, the club's still in the middle of a rebuild, and there are a lot of moving parts. But big changes are also happening inside Red Bull. In January, Jürgen Klopp took over as the new head of the company's entire sports division, and just this week, he made his first major move in the role, giving the green light to Marco Rose's exit from Leipzig. Actually, it was Klopp who pitched the idea to the new owner: move the club to a new stadium next season, literally just 20 meters away from PSG's home ground. And Jürgen is not just watching from the sidelines, he's all in, helping the Arnaults build something long-term. Not just a team that performs on the field, but a sustainable profitable business, something that works commercially too. And that's not just talk. Red Bull has already proven this model works across different countries, leagues, and situations. So yeah, they're not out here shouting about world domination or throwing around money for the cameras. They're playing the long game. And honestly, that combo, a wealthy backer like Arnault and a super efficient system like Red Bull, is a scary good mix. If you wanted to build the perfect challenger to take on the top dog, the big boss in town, this would be it. But let's be clear, Antoine is not here to start a war. Right from the jump, he said the project isn't about going head-to-head with their neighbors. And funny enough, PSG's president Nasser Al-Khelaifi was one of the first to respond to the deal, saying he didn't see it as a threat, but as a chance for growth. No surprise there, since Nasser and the Arnaults go way back and have a solid relationship. But the truth is that the history between PSG and FC Paris leaves no room for friendly handshakes. Something in their past made sure of that. Paris is one of the strangest places on the global football map. Despite being the biggest and richest city in Europe, for most of the 20th century, it didn't even have a single club consistently playing in the top division. Meanwhile, London had 5 teams going strong, some of them even fighting for titles. And when top-level football finally appeared in Paris, it took nearly 50 years for the city to become a dominant force in French football. And the wildest part, it didn't happen because the system worked. It happened in spite of it. Because in the beginning, the authorities were actually backing a completely different team. Back in the late 60s, 2 wealthy Parisian businessmen, with support from the city government, came up with the idea to create a brand new football club, one that would represent the upper class. Basically, a fancy alternative to Red Star, the scrappy working class team that already existed. But for the first year, this new project only existed on paper. No players, no coach, no stadium, nothing. It would take years to build a real club from scratch, not to mention climbing all the way up through the lower leagues. But the city officials didn't want to wait. They'd already hyped the project up with press and politics. They needed results fast, and that's when they decided to pull off one hell of a trick. It was the summer of 1970, just before the new football season kicks off. The Paris Football Club, yeah, the one that only existed on paper, suddenly merges with a real team, Saint-Germain, a second division side from just 15 kilometers outside the capital. And just like that, PSG was born. A club that didn't even exist a few months earlier is now officially on the football map. The debut season goes incredibly well. The team smashes expectations and earns a place in the top division right away. And that's when the problems begin, because that's exactly when the big boys upstairs roll out the second phase of their plan. A plan that ends up cursing the club for years to come. In their first year at the top, PSG barely held on. They stayed up, but by the end of the season, the club was drowning in debt and falling behind on salaries. So the city steps in, offering to clean up the mess, but with a catch. They'll only pay off the club's debts if PSG agrees to completely move from Saint-Germain to Paris, play at the Parc des Princes, and drop the Saint-Germain part of the name entirely. A part of the team that still remembered its roots, and a number of managers, including the vice president of the United Club, Henri Patrel, rejected these conditions. But City Hall didn't blink and did their own thing. They closed all the debts and divided the clubs back, simply removing the Saint-Germain prefix, but retaining almost the entire squad and other personnel. The people who disagreed with this decision remained at PSG, but it wasn't even a matter of keeping the lineup. The city-backed club kept its spot in the top division, and PSG was kicked down to the 3rd tier, the amateur league, where it had to start from scratch. In such a simple way, a club that had nothing at all behind it, instead of going up for many years and stuffing bumps, just swooped in and grabbed someone else's legacy, someone else's work, someone else's identity. I'm not really into all that superstition stuff, but after what happened next to Parisian football, well, karma probably exists after all. PSG was left with nothing, not even enough money to keep the stadium lights on. But Petrel wasn't done. He locked in a new investor. And this time he made it clear, no more public money, not after what they've done with the club. He found support among the creative elite. Henri had played for the club. He lived it. And to save it, he stepped down and passed the presidency to fashion designer Daniel Hector. On one condition, don't touch the name or the colors. Petrel moved to a more modest role in the club. And that decision, to sacrifice himself for the good of his hometown club, would change French football forever. Hector brought in other influential names from the art world. And suddenly, PSG wasn't just surviving, it became fashionable to support. The football world watched the flashy pressers and all these outsiders jumping into their game and just laughed. Especially the neighbors, who had already morphed into PSG's sworn enemies. Nobody took this new project seriously, and how wrong they all were. After rebuilding the squad from the ground up and putting a brand new management team in place, PSG climbed back to the top of French football in just 2 seasons. And in a wild twist of fate, just as PSG, betrayed and abandoned, was celebrating a second division title and earning its ticket back to the Ligue 1, Paris completely collapsed at the top. City officials lost interest in the project, and just 2 years after the split, Paris was relegated to the second division. And PSG didn't just take their spot in the top tier, they also moved into the Parc des Princes, the stadium meant for Paris. Honestly, you couldn't write a script like this. Real life beats every movie, and that was just the start. Things kept getting worse for Paris. They lost their pro status more than once, changed names, swapped owners, cycled through investors, and spent decades drifting at the bottom of the lower leagues. Meanwhile, PSG had their struggles too, but they pushed through the 70s, became champions in the 80s, and in the 90s even grabbed their first European trophy. So Paris was stuck in that curse for what felt like forever until one man stepped in. A year after Qatar took over the city's leading club, another deal went down in Paris. A much quieter and more modest deal. A well-known businessman from the consulting world, Pierre Ferracci, stepped in and took control of a third-division amateur team. Coming from a world where everything is about long-term strategy and thoughtful planning, Ferracci brought that same mindset to football. And just like that, for the first time in decades, the curse started to lift. Paris finally had a path forward. Under Ferracci's leadership, the club regained its professional status and climbed to Ligue 2 in 2015. And for nearly 10 years now, they've been holding their own at that level. That alone is historic. Paris hadn't enjoyed this kind of stability in over half a century. Moreover, in the second half of this decade, the club established itself as a regular contender for entry into the Ligue 1. Paris began operating on a tight, realistic budget and focused on youth. Most signings were free agents, loan deals, or graduates from the club's own academy. A big part of management's effort went into making the academy stronger, competitive enough to stand toe-to-toe with PSG's massive setup. For years, talented kids started their career in football at the Ferracci Club Academy, but then moved on to their neighbors, seeing much more career prospects there. Still, in recent seasons, a few solid players have graduated from the Paris school, and the club has made good money on some of them. Even in developing a strategy, the new owners of Paris divided the project into 2 stages. In the short term, the club needs to be promoted to the top division as soon as possible. Right now, Paris FC is sitting in 3rd place, just 1 point off that golden second spot. The top 2 teams at the end of the season go straight to Ligue 1. Clubs finishing 3rd to 5th head into the chaos of the promotion playoffs. Paris got close back in the 2021 season, finishing 5th. That was the first year with those optimistic investors from Bahrain. However, the team was eliminated in the first round. The same thing happened the next season, and then again the one after that. That first round playoff curse really stuck. So now the team's fully locked in on grabbing a direct ticket to Ligue 1 and skipping all that playoff drama. But that's just the start. The long-term goal is much bigger. Turn Paris into a regular and, more importantly, a competitive participant in the Champions League. In that case, the Paris men's team should learn from their colleagues of the opposite sex, since the Paris women's football club not only successfully plays in the top division, but also periodically participates in the main European Cup tournament. Once Paris FC gets promoted to Ligue Ligue 1, the budget is set to multiply, but don't expect them to start throwing cash around in the transfer market. The real action will be happening back home in the southern suburbs of Paris, in Orly, where the club's headquarters is based. Major infrastructure upgrades are already on the horizon. And yeah, something had to be done about the stadium situation too. The Sébastien Charléty Arena hasn't seen a proper renovation since the 90s. It's owned by the city, and the mayor's office isn't exactly thrilled about the idea of rebuilding it. Antoine and his team are already considering a long-term plan to build a new, fully owned stadium as part of a broader infrastructure vision. But right now, they needed a faster solution. And in February, the club announced the upcoming move to the Jean Bouin Stadium. Let's forget forever about the confrontation between Liverpool and Everton when calculating the distance between their stadiums. Jean Bouin is an arena just 30 meters from the Parc des Princes. Another important question arising from this move is how to fill it anyway. Even though Ferracci brought stability and results, the club still struggles with building a loyal fan base. They've been giving away free tickets for a few seasons, but that's a short-term move at best. If the goal is to build authentic community support, you can't just fill the stands with random folks looking to kill 2 hours. You need connection, identity, and purpose. But I think these guys will probably figure it out. Red Bull has mastered the playbook for fan engagement, how to build, maintain, and win people over. It's all about positioning. And here, Paris FC actually has an edge, even over PSG. They can brand themselves as the city's real local club, a community-first, player development-first project that puts the spotlight on homegrown talent instead of chasing global fame. This new football story in the capital has to feel different. It has to stand out, not copy what's already next door. Because over the past 10 to 15 years, while state-funded clubs were riding high, the football world around them changed. And while those systems might have seemed questionable back in the day, now they've pretty much stopped working altogether. Clubs like Manchester City and Paris Saint-Germain completely changed the football world when they showed up with huge money. Record transfers, superstar lineups, flashy marketing, and big promises. It looked like a shortcut to the top, but over time, it became clear. Money might get you there, but staying at the top takes way more than that. You need structure, consistency, and a real system. Even getting to the top hasn't been easy. Over the last 10 years, PSG has been the most unprofitable club in the transfer market. And that's with Premier League giants spending left and right, while French football is stuck in one of its worst crises. Still, PSG kept chasing one goal and never reached it. Manchester City finally got theirs. But look at the cost. People might forget now, but before Pep arrived, City had won just 2 league titles in 8 years under the new owners. But the best coach needs the best tools. World-class players, no exceptions. A big chunk of that money comes back through ticket sales, TV rights, and commercial deals. Because right now, City might be the fastest growing football business on the planet. 17 years ago, during the Thaksin Shinawatra days, the club was nothing like it is now. And unlike many clubs, even their neighbors, City usually posts profit, not losses. That said, some of those sponsorship deals still raise eyebrows. But let's be real, this kind of setup only works in England. And now, deep into PSG's second decade of Qatari ownership, even Nasser seems to understand you can't keep racking up record losses every season, especially when the results don't match the money invested. That's why PSG is stepping away from the old Galacticos playbook. The club has shifted its focus. They're not just chasing established superstars anymore. The spotlight's now on young, promising talent, players who can grow into elite-level stars. On top of that, the club's been investing heavily into its own infrastructure and academy. Just last year, they opened a new campus where junior development is front and center. But don't get it twisted. That doesn't mean PSG is suddenly turning into a pure talent factory. They're not filling the squad with just homegrown kids or cheap wonder kids. The club can still land big names for big money. They're just doing it smarter now. Every move follows a plan. Every signing needs to fit the vision. No exceptions, no matter how big the name. And here's the real game changer. With this shift in strategy, PSG's wage bill has taken a serious drop. Back in 2022, they hit a world record for total salary spent. But now, just 2 seasons later, they've slashed that figure by more than 3 times. The new strategy looks much more rational, especially considering the difficult financial situation of other once big clubs, the crisis in the television rights market, and the general mood within the French football industry. Perhaps Nasser really means it when he says that a new big football project in his city will benefit everyone. Meanwhile, this whole project is an interesting challenge for Red Bull too, because here, they're not running the show like usual. They're more like high-end consultants, applying their system, their methods, their proven playbook. And let's not forget, at the end of the day, Red Bull isn't really a football company. Every sports move they make is about boosting the brand and promoting its values: energy, youth, adrenaline, and innovation. But here's where things get tricky. Red Bull's whole vibe is speed, hype, and youth. The Arnault family, on the other hand, runs the biggest luxury empire in the world. Their products are all about timeless class, exclusivity, and slow-burn prestige. 2 worlds, one full of flash and energy, the other all about status and elegance. But can they blend? Probably. These are some of the sharpest minds in sports and business. If anyone can pull off this balance, it's this crew. And we can only wait and hope that Paris will be able to get a much-coveted ticket to Ligue 1 this season, which will undoubtedly benefit the whole of French football. Thanks for watching, lads. There's a lot more like this on the channel. Deep dives into the football biz and stories from behind the scenes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next video about Barcelona. It might already be up. Check the thumbnail. Catch you next week.